Hello friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. Alright folks, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you ain't no ordinary trucker's tale. This is the kind of story that'll make you think twice before hitting those long, lonely stretches of highway at night.
One late night, I was trucking through a stretch called Widow's Curve, a notorious bend in the road that's claimed more than its fair share of drivers. The fog was thick, rolling in like a wall, and visibility was down to almost nothing. I'd heard the stories about Widow's Curve, how a woman in black haunts the bend, mourning a lost love and causing accidents. But I never paid much mind until that night. As I rounded the curve, my headlights caught a figure standing right. On the edge of the road, a woman in a long, flowing black dress, her hair whipping wild in the wind, face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on wet asphalt. When I stopped, she was gone. But the moment I slowed, I felt a weight press down on the cab, like the air itself was thickening, suffocating. The radio crackled to life with a faint sobbing, soft and heart-wrenching. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was the fog playing tricks, but as I drove on, the sobbing followed me, echoing from the speakers. The temperature inside the cab dropped again, and my breath came in ragged puffs. Then, out of nowhere, I saw headlights behind me, another truck. But as it closed the distance, I realized something was wrong. The driver's face was pale, almost translucent, and their eyes were empty pits. I pushed the accelerator hard, but no matter how fast I went, that ghostly rig stayed right on my tail, matching every move. The sobbing grew louder, mixing with the roar of engines and the howl of the wind. Finally, I made it past the curve and onto a straight stretch of road. The ghost truck disappeared, and the radio went silent. I pulled into the next rest stop, heart pounding like a drum, sweat soaking. My shirt. I've driven that route countless times since, but I never take Widow's Curve after dark anymore. That woman in black and her phantom rig are real as the road beneath my wheels, and they're waiting for the next unlucky soul to come around the bend. If you're ever driving through that part of the world, keep your eyes peeled, and whatever you do, don't slow down. Because sometimes the things that haunt the highway aren't just stories told around the campfire. They're waiting for you in the fog, ready to make you part of their tale. I'll never forget the time I was hauling a load of auto parts from Phoenix to Tucson, cruising along a stretch called Dead Man's Hollow. The place already had an eerie reputation among drivers, but I figured it was just trucker folklore, until that night. The road was empty except for the occasional flicker of taillights far ahead, and the desert was silent, but for the hum of my engine. About halfway through the hollow, my headlights picked up something odd. A pair of headlights, but they weren't moving, just sitting there in the middle of the road, dead still. I slowed down, thinking maybe a stranded driver needed help. As I got closer, I saw a pickup truck with the door wide open and no one inside. The bed was loaded with rusted chains and broken tools, like someone had abandoned it in a hurry. I stopped, shut off my engine, and stepped out to take a closer look. That's when I heard it, a faint voice calling my name, barely more than a whisper riding on the wind. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I spun around, but the desert was empty, no one in sight. I called out, but only silence answered me. Suddenly, the pickup's door slammed shut on its own, and the headlights flickered like they were alive. I jumped back into my truck, slammed the door, and floored it. The moment I hit the accelerator, my radio burst to life with static and a chilling laugh echoing through the cab. I didn't dare look back until I was miles down the road. Some say Dead Man's Hollow got its name because a long time ago, a group of outlaws got trapped there and disappeared without a trace. Others say the spirits of those men still roam the desert, cursed to haunt anyone who passes through after dark. Whatever it was that night, I don't plan on finding out. I keep my windows rolled up tight whenever I drive that hollow, and I don't stop for anything that's not clearly alive and breathing. Because on that stretch of road, some things are better left alone, and some ghosts won't let you leave without saying hello. There was a run I did one cold winter night, hauling frozen goods from Chicago down to St. Louis. The highway was slick with ice, and the wind was howling like a pack of wolves, shaking my rig like it was about to blow off the road. I was somewhere near a place called Devil's Crossing, a forgotten stretch of road that cuts through dense woods and a dried-up riverbed, the kind of place where you could disappear and no one would notice for days. As I approached the crossing, my headlights caught a figure standing right in the middle of the road. At first, I thought it was a stranded driver, but as I slowed down, I noticed something wasn't right. The figure was a little kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, like something out of the 1940s. He held out his hand, and I swear, I heard his voice faintly over the radio, asking for help. I wanted to stop, to get out and check on him, but something deep inside warned me not to. The air grew cold enough to see my breath inside the cab, and the engine sputtered like it was dying. Suddenly, the kid vanished, just like that, without a trace. The radio crackled, and a whisper drifted through the static. "Don't look back." I slammed the gas and roared past Devil's Crossing as fast as I could. Later, at a diner down the road, I asked an old-timer about the place. He told me about a boy who had drowned in that river decades ago, his body never found, and how his spirit sometimes appears to drivers, trying to find a ride home. I don't know if that was what I saw, but ever since that night I keep my eyes peeled whenever I near Devil's Crossing. And if you ever see a kid on a dark road holding out his hand, just keep on driving. Some rides aren't meant to be given, and some passengers aren't meant to come home. One cold October night, I was driving through the outskirts of Pennsylvania, hauling a load of medical supplies to a hospital in Pittsburgh. The stretch of road I was on was called Hollow Creek Road, a narrow, winding back road surrounded by thick forest. The moon was full, casting an eerie silver glow over everything. But the silence was what got to me. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an unnatural stillness that settled deep in my bones. About an hour into the drive, I noticed a flicker in the passenger side mirror. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then the flicker grew brighter and took shape. A translucent figure of a woman standing just outside the window. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, stained and tattered as if she'd been wandering those woods for decades. Her eyes were hollow, her expression desperate. I froze, heart pounding so loud I thought the whole truck would hear it. She raised a pale hand and pressed it against the glass, and I swear, I could feel a coldness seep through the metal. I rolled the window up tight and locked the doors. The radio burst into static, and over the noise, I heard a whisper, "Help me." I looked away, slammed my foot on the gas, and didn't stop until I hit the main highway. I asked a local trucker later about Hollow Creek Road, and he told me the story of a woman who was murdered there years ago, her body never found. They say she waits for someone to help her find peace, but those who stop often disappear themselves. Ever since that night, I avoid that road when the moon is full, and I don't stop for anything that seems out of place. Sometimes, the things we see on the highway aren't just shadows, they're warnings, and sometimes they're desperate cries for help that we're not ready to answer. The highway's got stories, and every mile holds a secret if you're brave enough or unlucky enough to find it. Driving those endless highways for years, you get used to the loneliness, the endless miles of asphalt, the quiet hum of tires against the road. But what never gets easier are the nights when the highway feels alive, not with other drivers, but with something else. Something that watches you, follows you, and sometimes reaches out when you least expect it. After all the encounters, the glowing eyes in the fog, the phantom rigs trailing behind, the whispers over the radio, and the shadows that press close in the dark, I've learned that the highway isn't just a road. It's a corridor between worlds, a place where the living and the lost cross paths. I've seen things no one should see, felt things no one should feel, but I keep driving because that's what we do. We truckers are a stubborn breed, and the road is our home, no matter how haunted it might be. So if you ever find yourself alone on a dark stretch of highway and you feel like you're being watched, don't panic. Keep your eyes on the road, your hands steady on the wheel, and don't stop. Because sometimes, the scariest thing about the highway isn't the ghosts or the monsters. It's the silence that follows when you finally realize you're not alone. And if you listen close enough, you just might hear the highway whisper your name. That's the true horror out here. And it's always waiting, just beyond the next bend. Thanks for riding along with me. Stay safe out there. The highway at night has a way of warping your mind if you let it. I remember one trip in particular that stuck with me longer than most. I was hauling a load of electronics from Dallas to Albuquerque, a routine route I'd done 100 times. It was late, around 2 a.m., and the roads were slick from a recent rainstorm. The air smelled sharp, like ozone mixed with wet asphalt. I was driving through a stretch of desert that locals call Whisper Ridge, a lonely place where the wind plays tricks and shadows stretch too long. The sky was clear, stars blazing overhead, but the silence felt too complete, like the world had held its breath. About halfway through the ridge, my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A figure standing motionless, staring into the darkness. I slowed down, heart thumping. As I got closer, I saw it was a man wearing a tattered suit, soaked from the rain. His face was obscured by shadow, but something about him felt off. I called out, but he didn't respond, just stood there, unmoving, like a statue carved from stone. Then, as I passed, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The man was suddenly sitting in my passenger seat, eyes glowing faintly in the dark, mouth twisted into a cold smile. I slammed on the brakes and pulled over hard, swinging open the door. Nothing. No one. Just the desert night and the distant howl of a coyote. My hands trembled on the wheel as I tried to shake the feeling of eyes watching me from the shadows. I started the truck and sped off, not daring to look back. The next morning, when I stopped for fuel, I told another driver about it. He just nodded grimly. Whisper Ridge, he said, has a way of getting inside your head. Some say those who see the man never make it out. Others say he rides with you, whispering secrets you don't want to know. I didn't believe much in ghost stories before that night, but now I'm not so sure. Sometimes when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear that cold smile sneer from the back of my rig. And every time I roll through Whisper Ridge, I keep my windows up and my speed steady. Because some passengers aren't friendly. And some rides never really end. There's a stretch of highway in West Texas called the Devil's Backbone. It's a narrow, twisting two-lane road that snakes through rocky hills and dry scrubland. I've driven it more times than I can count, usually during the day, but one time I had no choice but to take it at night. I was hauling a load of refrigerated meat from El Paso to San Antonio, and a storm had shut down the main interstate. So I took the Backbone, which is notorious among truckers for its sharp curves and sudden drop-offs. The night was pitch black, and the only light came from my headlights slicing through thick fog that had rolled in faster than I expected. I was halfway through the twisty part when my radio started buzzing with static. It was faint at first, just a low hum, but then voices started coming through. Old voices, talking in a language I didn't recognize. I thought it was just interference, but the voices grew louder, and suddenly the cab filled with the smell of burning wood and something rotten like decay. I slammed on the brakes when I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road, a woman in a torn dress, her hair wild and tangled, eyes glowing red. She didn't move or blink, just stared right at me. My heart jumped into my throat, and I tried to swerve around her, but the steering wheel felt heavy, almost like it was being pulled. The truck shook violently, and for a moment, I thought I was losing control. Then she vanished, just disappeared into the fog like a mist evaporating. Under the sun. When I finally got control back, I pulled over to catch my breath. That's when I noticed scratch marks all along my door, like long, sharp claws had scraped the metal. I checked my mirrors, but there was no sign of the woman or anything else on the road. I've heard stories about the devil's backbone, how travelers have disappeared, how ghostly figures haunt the curves, how some nights the road itself seems to come alive. That night I believed every word. I never told my dispatcher about what happened, just changed routes and tried to forget it. But sometimes, when I'm alone on the road and the fog rolls in thick, I swear I can still feel those glowing eyes watching me from the edge of my mirrors. And I know better than to stop, because on the devil's backbone, stopping means you might never start again. There was this one time when I was running a load of furniture from Denver to Albuquerque. It was late fall, and the cold was already starting to bite deep into your bones at night. The highway was mostly empty, just me and the endless stretch of asphalt cutting through the Rockies. Around midnight, near a place called the Shadow Pass, the radio flickered off completely. No static, no noise, just dead silence. I tried to flip it back on, but the screen was blank, like the whole system had shut down. That's when the temperature inside the cab dropped sharply. My breath fogged up the windows and my hands went numb on the wheel. I told myself it was just the heater breaking down, but something felt wrong. Then, out of the darkness, headlights appeared in the distance, except they weren't coming toward me. They were moving parallel, just off the shoulder of the road. I slowed down, trying to get a better look. It was a semi-truck, but it was old, real old, with faded paint and no markings. The driver's window was down, and I could see a pale face staring straight at me, eyes hollow and empty. No blink, no movement, just staring. My radio suddenly crackled back to life, and over the speakers came a voice. It wasn't talking, just humming, low, eerie like a chant. I slammed on the gas, heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst through my chest. The truck behind me stayed with me, matching my speed, never getting closer, never falling behind. I drove for what felt like hours, the road twisting through the mountains like a snake, that ghostly rig tailing me through every curve. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke over the peaks, the old truck vanished, like it had never been there at all. I pulled over at a rest stop, shaking so hard I could barely hold my coffee. When I told some other drivers about it, they looked at me like I was crazy but nodded knowingly. "Shadow Pass," one said. "It's cursed. Some say the spirits of old truckers lost in the mountains haunt that stretch. They ride forever, looking for a way home." Ever since that night, I avoid Shadow Pass after dark. Sometimes, when I'm driving through other lonely places, I catch myself glancing in the rear view, half expecting to see those hollow eyes watching. And I swear, sometimes the radio hums that same eerie chant when I'm alone on the road. Some parts of the highway aren't just roads, they're gateways. And sometimes, if you listen close enough, you can hear the lost souls trying to hitch a ride. The strangest thing about driving through those haunted stretches isn't just the ghosts or the weird sounds. It's the way your own mind starts, playing tricks on you. I remember one night hauling lumber from Chattanooga to Nashville. The road quiet except for the hum of the engine and the steady beat of rain against the windshield. I was deep into the back roads, where the trees lean over the highway like they're trying to trap you inside a tunnel of shadows. I'd been driving for hours, fatigue creeping up like a slow poison, when I started hearing knocking from the trailer, like someone was tapping on the walls from the inside. At first I thought maybe a loose piece of cargo was shifting, but I checked the load before I left. It was tight as a drum. The knocking kept coming, rhythmic and deliberate, almost like it was trying to communicate. I pulled over to a rest stop, opened the trailer doors, and shined my flashlight inside. Nothing. Just stacks of wood, neatly strapped down. But then, the tapping shifted to the cab. Light raps against the side window, faint but distinct. I looked around, no one there. I locked the doors, started the truck, and drove off as fast as I dared. The knocking followed me all the way back to the interstate, echoing in my ears like a ghostly heartbeat. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was riding with me, tapping out messages in the dark. I asked a few other truckers if they'd ever heard anything like that, and one old-timer told me about a legend. A man who died in a logging accident decades ago, his spirit trapped inside the woods he loved, trying to warn travelers of danger. Maybe it was just a story, but every time I drive through those woods now, I can't help but listen for the tapping. It's like the highway itself remembers what happened there, and the past isn't ready to let go. Sometimes I think the dead don't just haunt places, they haunt the people who pass through them. And on long, lonely nights, when the world is quiet except for the road, you can hear their stories, if you're brave enough to listen. I was hauling auto parts through Nevada, just past Ely, heading south on Highway 318, a route I don't usually take because there ain't much out there but dust, rock, and regrets. This was during one of those long stretches where your brain goes kinda numb, right? You're staring at the same damn cracked asphalt for hours, your coffee's gone cold, and your eyes are dry from watching the mirage shimmer off the hood. Sun had just dipped down behind the hills, and the sky was going that bruised purple color. I hadn't passed another rig in over an hour, and my GPS had lost signal way back at the last junction. That's when I noticed the mile markers started going weird. I know for a fact I passed marker 212, then 213, but then I saw another 212. I figured maybe I was losing it, or maybe someone vandalized the signs, but then it happened again. Marker 214, 215, and then 214. Same stretch of fence, same busted sign, same dead cow on the side of the road, bloated and stiff like it had been there a week. I thought maybe I was looping. Maybe I'd missed a turn and circled back somehow. But how the hell? You do that on a one-way highway with no exits. I checked my dash. Fuel was fine, engine temp fine. Everything looked normal, except nothing felt normal. I rolled down my window, hoping the wind would clear my head, but the air smelled wrong. Like burnt hair and old pennies. Then the road started changing, subtle at first. The pavement got darker. The lines were faded. Trees that weren't there before started popping up along the shoulders, but they were wrong too. Too tall, too thin, bark black like they'd been scorched, branches twitching like they were breathing. I slowed down, flipped on my high beams, and saw it. A gas station. Middle of nowhere. No pumps, just a crumbling old shack with a flickering neon sign that said open, even though the place looked abandoned. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe curiosity, maybe some deeper pull. I parked the rig and stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots louder than it should have. When I opened the station door, this old bell rang, and suddenly the place was bright inside. Too bright, like fluorescent lights from a hospital operating room. Shelves were stocked, but the labels were all blank. No names, no brands, just white packages. Behind the counter stood this tall fella, skin stretched tight over his skull, lips peeled back in a permanent grin. "Pump's out," he said, though I hadn't asked. "You driving long tonight?" I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. Then he said, "Be careful, son. You're drifting off the road. Ain't many come back once they cross." I backed out of there and ran for my rig. The door slammed shut behind me on its own. I fired up the engine, heart pounding, and floored it. That gas station disappeared behind me like it had never existed. I checked my GPS again. Suddenly it had signal, and the map said I was 30 miles past the stretch I thought I was stuck in. When I looked at my phone later, there was a voice memo I didn't record. Just static. And at the end, a whisper. "Next time you stop, we'll finish the conversation." Ain't been back that way since. Some roads don't want you to just pass through. They want something from you. They're hungry. And if you stop long enough, they'll figure out what you got to give. I was driving a load of frozen seafood from Seattle down to Portland, a route I'd run dozens of times without incident. That night, the rain was coming down hard, turning the highway slick and shiny under the streetlights. I was cruising along Interstate 5, minding my own business, when I noticed something strange in my side mirror. There was a car behind, me tailgating way too close, like the driver was either impatient or had some other motive. The thing was, it wasn't just any car. It was old, like a rusted-out 1950s sedan, the kind you'd see in a junkyard, not on a busy highway. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and the driver's face was completely obscured by shadows, but I could feel eyes burning into me. I slowed down, hoping the car would pass, but instead, it stayed glued behind me. I took the next exit, thinking maybe it'd go around me, but it followed. I pulled into a truck stop, flipped on my hazards, and the car stopped right behind me. I stepped out cautiously, the rain dripping from my hat, and when I looked over, the car was empty. No driver, no passengers, just the engine still running, its headlights glaring like eyes in the dark. I called out, but no answer. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the car shut off, the lights went dark, and it vanished into the rain like smoke. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I locked the doors, jumped back in the cab, and sat there for a long time, waiting for dawn to break. When the sun finally rose, I checked around the truck and found a strange symbol scratched into the pavement beneath where the car had been parked. It was a circle with lines radiating out, something I'd never seen before, but it felt ancient and wrong. Ever since that night, whenever I'm on the road and it's raining, I can't shake the feeling that something's watching me from the shadows, waiting for me to slow down so it can pull right up beside me again. Some nights, I swear I hear a creaking engine just outside the cab, but when I turn my head, there's nothing there but rain and silence. Driving these highways, you learn quick. It's not just the weather or the road conditions you gotta watch out for. It's what rides along with you in the dark. There was this one night when I was hauling heavy machinery from Kansas City to Tulsa. The highway was dead silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every little sound explode in your head. I was pushing to make my delivery on time, so I hadn't stopped for hours. Somewhere near a stretch called Devil's Creek, I noticed a pickup truck on the side of the road with its hazard lights blinking. I figured maybe someone needed help. Truckers help each other out, right? So I pulled over and walked up to the cab. But when I got there, no one was inside. The keys were in the ignition, the engine still warm, but the seat was empty. I called out a few times, no answer. Then, right when I was about to call it in and leave, I heard faint music coming from the back of the truck. Old country, soft and crackling like a radio from the 1950s. I walked around and saw a dusty tape. Player sitting on the passenger seat, spinning a tape that looked decades old. Suddenly, the music stopped, and in its place came a whisper from behind me. "Don't follow the creek." I spun around but saw nothing except the empty road stretching out under the stars. I climbed back in my rig, locked the doors, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. For weeks after, every time I passed that stretch, I'd hear faint music drifting through the vents, no matter how many times I checked the radio and speakers. That road is cursed somehow. The kind of place where time and reality get all twisted. I don't know what that whisper meant or who left that tape behind, but one thing's for sure. Some nights, the highway is alive, and it's trying to tell you something. You just gotta listen. But be careful what you hear. Sometimes it's better to keep your windows rolled up and your eyes on the road, because the highway's secrets aren't meant for everyone, and once they get inside your head, they don't let go. One night, I was driving from Memphis to Little Rock with a load of fresh produce. It was late, and the highway was slick from a recent rainstorm, the kind of wet that glistens under streetlights and makes everything look like a dream you're stuck in. I was just outside a small town called Brinkley when my radio started crackling, with static. Not the usual interference. This was different. The static twisted into soft voices, almost like they were speaking just beneath the surface, barely audible, but unmistakably human. I tuned the dial, trying to clear the fuzz, but the voices grew louder, clearer, whispering my name over and over. Tom, Tom, Tom. I froze. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. I told myself it was just fatigue messing with me, but the voices didn't stop. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing by the side of the road. Not a hitchhiker, something else. A tall woman, in a long white dress, her hair tangled and wet, faceless, just a smooth blank where her features should be. I slammed on the brakes, skidded to a stop, but when I looked back, she was gone. No footprints, no sign she'd been there. The radio crackled louder, now screaming with static, then silence. I didn't sleep for the rest of that trip driving, straight through to Little Rock. After that night, I started avoiding that stretch of highway altogether. Some say she's a spirit, a ghost looking for something she lost. Others say she's a warning. Don't stop. Don't look back. Whatever she is, I know one thing. When you're alone on that road and you hear your name whispered through the static, you better keep on driving, because some things aren't meant to be stopped for. Couple months after that swamp encounter, I was up north running a route through Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It's beautiful up there in the daytime. Thick woods, crisp air, lakes stretching forever. But at night, whole different animal. The trees get too quiet. The shadows seem to press in, and the roads feel like they were carved straight through some ancient sleeping beast that don't like being disturbed. I'd picked up a load in Marquette and was headed east towards Sault Ste. Marie. It was just past 2 a.m. when I hit a stretch of Route 28 that cut through a dense forest. No streetlights, no cell signal, not even a moon that night. Just dark upon dark. I had the radio low, drinking a bad cup of truck stop coffee and trying to shake a case of highway hypnosis when my headlights caught something on the shoulder. At first I thought it was a deer, eyes glinting, head low. But as I got closer, it stood up. This thing was tall, taller than any man I've seen, thin as a rail, covered in matted hair like it had crawled out of the ground. Its limbs were too long, arms hanging past its knees, and its face, hell, I don't even know if you could call it a face. Just hollow sockets and a grin that looked carved in. Not natural, not right. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, and the rig groaned to a stop. The thing didn't flinch, just stood there, watching me, like it was deciding something. I reached for the glove box where I keep a little .38 just in case, but before I could grab it, the creature moved, fast, like blink and you miss it fast. 1 second it was standing by the road, the next it was right at my driver's side window, facing me through the glass. I let out a yell and hit the gas so hard the wheels kicked gravel. The rig lurched forward, fishtailed slightly, but I didn't stop. Didn't even look back. I drove until dawn, white-knuckled the whole way. When I pulled into the yard to unload, one of the dock guys pointed at my cab and said, "What the hell happened to your door?" I stepped out and looked, and there were scratches. Long, deep, gouged into the metal like something had raked claws across it. 5 of them, perfectly spaced, and the side mirror, cracked clean down the middle, like it had been struck by a hammer. I didn't report it. What was I going to say? "Hey, boss, a forest demon took a swipe at me last night." No one believes that crap unless they've lived it. But I swear, that part of Michigan, it's got something in the woods. Something that don't sleep. A few other drivers I've talked to say the same. They call it the Watcher. Always at the edge of the tree line. Always smiling. And if it comes to your window, it's already decided you're next. I started keeping sage and an old native amulet one of the yard guys gave me. He was Ojibwe, said his grandfather used. To talk about creatures that lived in the pines, ancient ones, older than people, who'd never forgiven us for cutting down their forest. I don't know if it helps, but I haven't seen the Watcher since. Still, when I'm driving north, and the trees get thick, and the air gets still, I keep one hand on the wheel, and the other on that amulet. 'Cause there's things out there waiting, and the highway. It don't just connect places, it connects worlds. There was this one haul I'll never forget, probably the one that rattled me the worst. I was taking a load of insulation panels from Boise all the way down to Flagstaff. Long stretch of road, lots of open desert and high plains in between. Normally I'd stop for the night around Page, but I was running behind, and the dispatcher was breathing down my neck, so I figured I'd just push through the night. Mistake number 1. Now, I've driven through the Navajo Nation before, and I always try to be respectful. I've heard the stories. Skinwalkers, cursed stretches of land, spirits that hitch rides if you ain't careful. And I don't mess around with that stuff. I don't honk at burial mounds, don't leave my rig idling near strange rock formations, and I never, ever pick up hitchhikers out there, especially after midnight. That night it was just past 1:30 a.m., and I was rolling through a desolate stretch of highway. No lights, no other trucks, just me and the stars. The moon was barely a sliver, the kind that makes the sky look extra dark, and the road ahead seemed like it was being swallowed by the horizon. Out of nowhere, my headlights flickered, just for a second, but it was enough to make me slow down. Then I saw it, a figure standing on the side of the road, not sticking a thumb out, not flagging me down, just standing there, wearing old-style clothes, looked like a tattered coat and some kind of cloth wrapped around the head, couldn't even see a face. I kept rolling, not looking directly at it, trying to convince myself it was just a weird bush or something. But when I looked in my side mirror, there it was. Not on the shoulder anymore. It was in the road, following me. And the freaky part? I was doing a steady 50, and the damn thing wasn't falling behind. It was gliding. No movement to it, like it wasn't running, wasn't even walking. Just floating, arms stiff at its sides, head cocked ever so slightly like it was listening. My mouth went dry. I hit the gas hard and didn't stop for 20 miles. I don't even remember the drive, just a blur of sagebrush and fear. When I finally reached a lit-up gas station near Cameron, I pulled over and jumped out. I walked, a lap around my rig, checking everything. And right there on the back doors of my trailer were these long, dark streaks, like handprints dragged down the metal, but too long to be human. And etched into the dust on the rear bumper was a word I couldn't pronounce, but it burned into my brain anyway. I asked an old man inside the station about it, showed him a photo. His face went pale. He told me to delete the picture. Burn. Some cedar, and never stop on that road again. Said some things out there aren't meant to be seen by folks like me, and if you do see one, don't acknowledge it. Don't speak its name, and above all else, don't let it follow you home. I didn't sleep that night. I parked my rig in a lit lot, locked the doors, and kept my back to the sleeper cab wall with a tire iron in my lap. You think the road is all about logistics and deadlines, but I'm telling you, once the sun dips below the line, the road turns into something else entirely. It becomes a place where the veil gets real thin, and the further you drive, the more likely you are to end up somewhere you weren't meant to be. Another time I was running a short haul from Amarillo to Roswell. Should have been easy. Just a straight shot through the Texas flatlands into New Mexico. Wasn't even hauling a full load. Just a few crates of mechanical parts. I left around 9 p.m., hoping to make Roswell before dawn, but the weather had other plans. Storm clouds rolled in, heavy, low, and angry, and the wind picked up hard. Around midnight. I was about 30 miles from the New Mexico border, driving through a stretch of road that locals call Dead Man's Pass. Ain't on the map by that name, but truckers know it. The name sticks. The road dips and rises. Like a roller coaster, flanked by empty fields that stretch forever, and there ain't a single house or light post for miles. I was climbing up one of the longer hills when my CB radio crackled to life out of nowhere. I hadn't heard a peep from it all night, and I damn sure hadn't keyed it. But it burst on with this low, garbled voice, too warped to understand at first, like someone was underwater talking backwards. I leaned forward, turned the volume down low, and tried to make sense of it. It wasn't static. It was a voice. Deep, whisperin' fast, repeating the same thing over and over. I swear to God it was saying, "He's in the cab. Don't look. He's in the cab. Don't look." Chills ran down my spine. I glanced at the passenger seat, empty, looked in the side mirror. Nothing. Then I slowly, and I mean slowly, turned my head toward the sleeper behind me. I wish I hadn't. There was a man sitting on my bunk. I don't know how the hell he got there. He wasn't breathing, wasn't moving, just sitting there, staring straight ahead with eyes like cloudy marbles. He looked like he'd been dead for days. His skin was gray-blue, stretched thin over his face, and his mouth was hanging open like he was trying to scream, but nothing came out. I panicked, nearly jackknifed my rig swerving onto the shoulder. When I turned around again, heart pounding out of my chest, he was gone. Just gone. No door open, no smell, no sound. Just emptiness and a faint cold in the air, like a freezer had been cracked open in the back of my cab. I stepped outside, lit a cigarette with a shaky hand, and walked a circle around the truck to make sure no one was hiding. Nothing. No. Footprints. No sign of forced entry. I climbed back in, locked every damn door, and just sat there for 20 minutes trying to breathe normal again. That radio never made another sound. I finished the drive in silence, not looking back once. When I told another driver about it a few days later, he just nodded and said, "Yeah, he shows up when you've been driving too long on that road, likes to ride with the lonely ones." I asked him what he meant, and he said, "Some spirits don't want to haunt a place. They want to move, and a truck's the perfect vessel." Ever since then, I check my sleeper twice before I roll. And if the CB starts whispering in the middle of nowhere, I don't listen. I just keep my eyes forward and drive. 'Cause sometimes the worst things you can do out here is look. Now I know some folks might be listening to this and thinking I've just been out on the road too long, breathing diesel fumes and not getting enough shut-eye, but let me tell you something. When you've been driving for decades like I have, you learn the difference between fatigue and fear. And what I felt that night wasn't no driver's burnout. It was pure, cold dread, the kind that seeps into your bones and lingers long after the engine cools. About a month after that desert incident, I got a call from an old friend of mine named Rick. We go way back, hauled some nasty weather together through the Rockies in our younger days. He sounded shook on the phone, which ain't like him. He's one of those old-school tough types, doesn't even flinch when a deer takes out half his grill. But that night he was whispering, voice cracking, telling me he'd just gone through the dead stretch near the Ozarks. I knew the place, 20 miles of winding blacktop, no lights, no exits, no signs. Locals say it's cursed. I always thought it was just an old trucker's tale. Till Rick told me what he saw, said he was driving just before dawn, moon, still hanging low when he noticed something odd. His GPS started glitching, showing his truck spinning in circles. Then, out of nowhere, the road started repeating. Same turn, same rock outcropping, same busted mile marker, over and over. He figured maybe he was dreaming or fell into some kind of loop, so he pulled over, killed the engine, and stepped out for a smoke to clear his head. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. Not soft ones either, heavy, like boots made of stone. He spun around and saw a figure in the distance, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an old Confederate soldier's coat, the buttons rusted, the fabric shredded and flapping in the wind that wasn't even blowing. The man, or ghost, or whatever the hell it was, just stood there staring. Rick called out, asking if he needed help. The thing didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then it raised its hand and pointed directly at Rick's trailer. Rick didn't wait. He jumped back in, locked the doors, hit the pedal, and drove straight through what he thought was a tree, but passed through like mist. And then, the GPS corrected itself. The sky started to lighten. He was out of the loop. But when he checked the back of his trailer at the next way station, he found handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the dust, child-sized, too high to reach without climbing. Rick's a changed man now. He quit driving nights altogether. keeps holy water in his glove box, wears a crucifix his grandma gave him, and this is a guy who never stepped foot in a church his whole life. That story stuck with me. Made me wonder how many places out there are like that stretch in the Ozarks. Highways that don't just connect towns, but tear holes between our world and something else, something hungry. Every so often I start to think maybe the road's done with me. Maybe I've seen the worst it's got. But then I'll get back behind the wheel, just trying to haul some freight in peace, and the shadows will stretch a little too long. The night'll get a little too quiet, and I'll remember it's never over. Not for folks like us, not for truckers. 'Cause the road don't forget, and it never lets go. It was about 2 weeks after Rick's call when I had my next run-in. I was driving through Louisiana, hauling a load of appliances down toward Baton Rouge. Now, if you've ever run that stretch of I-10 through the swamps at night, you know it's a strange place. Low fog hanging over the bayou, cypress trees twisting like bony fingers, and the smell of damp earth and something older, like rot mixed with rust. I'd taken that road dozens of times, but this time, something felt off the moment I crossed the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge. The air got thick, like I was breathing soup. Even with the AC blasting, sweat started pooling on the back of my neck. I looked down and saw the temperature gauge, twitching, jumping like it had a mind of its own. Then the radio started picking up this strange hum. No music, no voices, just this deep, low vibration, like a didgeridoo being played underwater. I tried switching stations, turning the damn thing off, even pulled the fuse, but it kept going. I was starting to get that feeling again, that knot in my gut, that pressure in my ears like I'd driven into a place I wasn't supposed to be. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, in the middle of the bridge, a truck just like mine. Same model, same paint job, even the same company decals, just sitting there with its hazard lights flashing. No one inside, no doors open, no sign of a driver. I slowed down, rolled past real cautious-like, and my headlights swept across the side of the trailer. It was covered in handprints, hundreds of them. Small, muddy handprints, like children had been crawling all over it. Some were smeared, some were fresh. One of them slid down the side like it had been dragging. I swear to you, the moment my lights hit that trailer, my engine sputtered. Not once, twice, like something was sucking the power straight out of my rig. I tapped the gas, trying not to panic, but my truck felt like it was struggling through. Molasses. Then, in my mirror, I saw it. Something stepped out from behind that abandoned truck. I didn't see its face, couldn't. But it was tall, lanky, and moving in this jerky, unnatural way, like its bones didn't line up right. It started coming toward me, slow at first, but then it picked up speed, feet slapping against the pavement like wet leather. I floored it. The engine roared to life like it knew I needed it, and I tore out of there, tires howling. The thing chased me for maybe a quarter mile before vanishing into the mist. Just gone. I didn't stop till I hit Baton Rouge, and even then, I kept my rig running while I sat in the cab with the door locked, hand on my tire iron. That bridge? I ain't crossed it since. I take the long way around now, even if it costs me hours and fuel. 'Cause whatever was on that bridge, it wasn't human, and something tells me it was waiting. Maybe not for me specifically, but for someone. Maybe any poor soul who happens to slow down at the wrong time. That's the thing about this job. People think it's just lonely roads and bad coffee, but they don't know the half of it. Out here, past midnight, when there's not another set of headlights for miles, you start to hear things, see things. Sometimes they're just ghosts of your memories. Other times, they're not. So if you're ever crossing the Atchafalaya after dark, and you see a rig sitting still with its hazards on, do yourself a favor. Don't stop. Don't slow down. And for God's sake, don't look in your mirrors too long. You might see something coming for you, and if you do, it's already too late. Ever since that night, things have been quieter on the road, but not completely normal. See, when you've stared into the eyes of something like the wireman, when you've smelled rusted blood and heard bones grinding inside the dirt, You don't just go back to regular life. It stays with you, tucked behind your thoughts, lurking like a shadow that only shows up when the light hits just right. I kept on trucking. Had to. It's in my blood. But I never drive Route 86 at night anymore. Hell, I barely take that route at all unless I absolutely gotta. And when I do, I don't stop. Not for hitchhikers, not for strange lights, not for nothing. A couple weeks after I sealed that grave, I was rolling through Nebraska when I picked up a guy on the CB screaming bloody murder. He was hysterical, begging anyone listening to help. Said something was in the back of his trailer, scratching, banging, whispering his name over and over. Said he saw wire poking out through the cracks in the doors like it was growing inside. My blood ran cold. I got on the radio and tried to talk him down, told him to stop. Get out, don't open that trailer, whatever he did. But then it went quiet. Just this long silence followed by the hiss of a dead channel. I tried hailing him again. Nothing. A few days later, I saw a bulletin from a local sheriff. A rig had been found jackknifed off a bridge, trailer split open, driver gone. All that was left were drag marks leading into the woods and twisted strands of barbed wire scattered down. The road. It was like the wireman was still out there. Or maybe there's more than one. That's when I started connecting dots. What if he ain't alone? What if there's more like him, born from places scarred by pain and buried anger? I started hearing stories from other drivers. Things I'd dismissed before now sounded like warnings. One guy said he saw a little girl standing in the middle of I-40, dressed in white, barefoot, no expression. He stopped, got out, but when he approached, she vanished. And the next morning, he found handprints all over his windshield, from the inside. Another fella swears he picked up a woman in a blue dress outside of Tulsa. She didn't speak, just pointed forward. He drove for hours with her sitting silent in the passenger seat until he glanced away for a second, and she was gone. Just a puddle of rainwater in her place and a soft whisper echoing in his sleeper. Keep driving. These highways, they ain't just pavement and paint. They're veins running across the country, carrying more than just cargo and diesel. They carry memories, pain, things that shouldn't still be around, things that feed on the loneliness, the isolation, the endless rhythm of rubber on asphalt. And truckers like me, we're the lifeblood. We see what others don't. We go where most won't. And sometimes we pay the price for it. I've started keeping a journal now, scribbling down every strange thing I hear or see. Not because I think it'll save me, but maybe someday another driver will read it and know what to look for. Maybe it'll help him survive. 'Cause make no mistake, the road's got eyes, and some of them ain't friendly. So if you're ever driving late at night and your radio starts picking up static, or you see a figure standing just beyond your headlights, or your truck suddenly drops in temperature for no reason, don't stop, don't speak. And whatever you do, don't open the door. I was somewhere between Flagstaff and Winslow when I felt it again, that shift in the air. You truckers know what I mean. It's like the road itself changes under you. 1 second, you're cruising smooth. Clear skies, tunes playing, and the next, bam, the air thickens, like you're driving through soup, and the hairs on your neck stand up like soldiers at attention. That's how I knew something was coming. It always starts the same way. The hum of the tires changes. A soft whine creeps in behind the engine noise, and the shadows out your side mirrors start to move just a little too much. I looked at the clock, 3:17 a.m., that cursed hour. Ain't nothing good ever happens between 3 and 4 in the morning. I was rolling through a stretch of old desert highway I'd been down a dozen times before. Flat land all around, no trees, just scrubbing rock. But that night, it felt like the desert was watching me. I turned down the radio. Too quiet. Even the CB was silent, and that's rare. Always someone mouthing off or calling out a bear sighting or asking for a weather check. But that night, dead air. Just me, my rig, and the road. Then I saw it, a light, way off in the distance, flickering red and blue. I figured it was a patrol car or maybe an accident up ahead, so I slowed down, easing off the gas, eyes squinting, through the windshield. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't flashing like emergency lights should. It was just pulsating, like it had a rhythm, a heartbeat. That's when the static kicked in on the CB, sharp, loud, almost like a scream, and my headlights flickered. Just for a second, but long enough to make my stomach twist. I reached for the switch, flipping it back and forth, but they stayed dim, barely cutting through the darkness. And then I saw her, standing in the road, barefoot, dressed in a tattered yellow sundress, her hair long and black, hanging in wet strands across her face. Her skin looked pale, almost blue, like she'd been out in the cold too long. I hit the brakes, tires skidding just a little. Not hard, but enough to make my rig lurch. She didn't move, didn't even flinch. Just stared at me through that wall of dim light. I leaned out the window, shouting, "You okay? You need help?" Nothing. Not even a blink. I reached for my flashlight, but before I could switch it on, the girl tilted her head. Slow. Unnatural, like a puppet with its strings twisted, and pointed behind me. Not off to the side, not toward the desert, directly behind my truck. My heart stopped. I shifted into park, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped out. My boots crunched on the gravel, and the air hit me like a slab of ice. I circled around the rig, heart pounding, flashlight beam shaking. But there was nothing. No sign of anyone, no girl, no lights, just the long stretch of desert road and my own breath fogging the air. I turned back toward the cab, and that's when I saw it. In my side mirror. Not my reflection, no. Someone else's. A man, no, a thing, standing behind me. Eyes pitch black, skin like dried mud, mouth hanging open wider than it should have been, and barbed wire wrapped around his neck, tight, digging in. I spun, but there was nothing there. Mirror was empty. The girl was gone. And the road ahead, clear as daylight, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I jumped back in the truck, slammed the door, locked it, and floored it. Didn't let off the gas till I hit a truck stop 2 hours down. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there, drinking burnt coffee and staring at the dark desert beyond the lights, wondering if maybe I'd just gotten too tired. But I knew better. I'd seen the signs, heard the stories, felt the cold. The wiremen may have been buried, but there were others. Maybe always had been. The kind that don't haunt houses, they haunt highways.
So next time you're riding late, and the CB goes quiet, and the lights ahead don't look quite right, do yourself a favor. Keep driving. Don't stop. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirrors too long. You might not like what looks back.
After reading that coroner's report, I knew I was dealing with something way beyond ghost stories and roadside spooks. This was ancient, twisted, and it had roots deeper than any of us ever knew. I couldn't shake the feeling that Carl Hensley, or whatever he'd become, was trying to finish something. Maybe he'd died angry. Maybe he wanted revenge. Or maybe, just maybe, he was still bound to that cursed stretch of road, and now he needed someone to keep his memory. Alive, someone like me. I started carrying more than just a sidearm. Holy water, salt, iron nails. I ain't ashamed to admit I dipped into every bit of lore I could find. I even nailed a small iron cross under the dashboard just above the clutch. Every little charm I could find, every superstition I'd once laughed at, I started taking seriously. Desperate times, you know. But even with all that, he kept showing up. Always just at the edge of my vision, standing in the breakdown lane, walking slow across my headlights, peering in through the sleeper window while I pretended to sleep. One night, outside of Amarillo, I woke up to find all 4 doors of my rig wide open. I sleep with them locked always, but they were hanging open like someone had been inside. Nothing was taken, not even my wallet. But my boots, they were filled with blood. Fresh, warm blood. I checked myself all over, but I wasn't bleeding. And I sure as hell didn't see no one leave. I almost gave up the road after that. Told dispatch I needed time off, maybe look into local deliveries instead. But the nightmares got worse when I stayed still. I'd wake up thinking I was in the truck, hearing the engine humming, feeling the rumble beneath me, and I'd look out the window and see the canyon passing by. Every time. Even when I was sleeping in my own bed, it was like the road followed me home. Like the wireman wasn't just haunting the highway anymore. He was inside me. I talked to a priest, Father Riley, an old friend of my sister's. I didn't tell him the whole story at first, just hinted that I'd seen some things on the road. He listened, real patient, then said, "Some roads were never meant to be traveled. Some wounds in the earth never heal, and sometimes, when we dig too deep, something looks back at us." That chilled me to the bone, but what he said next hit even harder. He told me that entities like the one I'd seen, they feed on patterns, on repetition, on cycles of fear, grief, blood. He said if I wanted to break it, I had to go back, to the canyon, face it. Finish what he started, he said, or he'll finish it through you. I ain't never wanted to believe in fate. I'm just a trucker, a man who likes the open road and a full tank of diesel. But that night, sitting in my rig with the CB silent and the moon just a sliver, in the sky I made up my mind. I was going back to Route 86, and this time I wasn't just passing through. I was going to dig up whatever secrets were buried there. I was going to find that cursed grave, and I was going to end this, one way or another. I picked a night when the moon was full, figured if I was going to face pure evil, I might as well see it coming. I loaded up my rig with more than just tools and fuel. I had a shovel, a crowbar, flares, and a duffel bag filled with items I'd been collecting from every gas station, antique shop, and roadside oddity store from Texas to Oregon. Iron nails, a blessed rosary, black salt, a mirror framed in silver, even a chunk of obsidian someone claimed came from a meteorite. It all felt like overkill until you've seen a man made of barbed wire stare into your soul through the side mirror of a Peterbilt. I didn't tell no one where I was going. Figured they wouldn't believe me anyway, or worse, they'd try to stop me. I left just after sundown, riding that familiar stretch toward mile marker 222, past the bends and curves I now knew by memory, and trauma. The closer I got, the colder it seemed to get, like the air itself knew I was coming back. When I finally hit the canyon, I pulled off the road, headlights cut, and let the truck idle in silence. The sky was too quiet, no wind, no bugs, no howl of coyotes in the distance. Just that heavy, almost suffocating stillness. I stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and grabbed the shovel. There was a spot just before the bend in the canyon. An old marker stone covered in moss and dust, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Benny had told me once that was where they buried Carl Hensley, not because it was proper, but because the locals didn't want his body anywhere near town. I knelt and cleared the overgrowth, and there it was, a rusted piece of metal jammed into the soil, shaped almost like a cross but bent, wrong. I started digging. The deeper I went, the thicker the air got. Sweat poured down my back even though the temperature had dropped to the 30s. After about 3 feet, I hit wood. Rotten, cracked like old paper. And then the whispering started. Real soft, like wind at first, but it wasn't wind. It was voices. Hundreds of them, all muttering nonsense, overlapping like 1,000 CB radios tuned to the wrong station. My hands shook, but I kept digging, and then I saw it. The bones, tangled in barbed wire, just like Benny said. The wire wasn't wrapped around the bones, it was through them, like it had grown out from inside. I dropped the shovel and reached into the duffel, pulled out the black salt and iron nails, and started encircling the grave. I poured the salt, drove nails into the ground at the corners of the makeshift burial, reciting a prayer I barely remembered from childhood. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me, heavy, slow, deliberate. I turned, and there he was. Not 30 feet away. The wireman. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was coming for me. His limbs moved in that jerky, unnatural way, joints twisting like broken hinges. His face was a mess of wire and shadow, but his eyes, they burned green, glowing so bright I could see my reflection in them, and he was smiling. I stood my ground, holding that silver-framed mirror like a shield. "You ain't taking me," I growled. "Not tonight." He stopped right at the edge of the salt circle. Couldn't cross it. The ground shook. The whispering turned to screaming. My head pounded, blood pouring from my nose, but I didn't break the circle. I kept chanting, louder now, the prayer rolling off my tongue like fire. The wireman shrieked, this high-pitched metal-on-metal screech that made my teeth hurt. And then he started to fade, like fog burning, off under a desert sun. The barbed wire unraveled from the bones, snapping and curling into the dirt like it was trying to escape. Then, silence. Pure and deep. The kind of silence you feel in your chest. I collapsed. Don't remember how long I lay there, but when I woke up, the sun was rising over the canyon. The grave was empty. The wire was gone. Just a pile of old, broken bones and dust. I buried them proper that time. Marked the spot with a fresh cross, said another prayer, and then I got back in my truck and drove. Haven't seen the wireman since, but I still leave salt in my cab, still keep that mirror hanging by the wheel, because you never really know with these things. Some spirits move on, others, they just wait for the next driver too dumb or too stubborn to take the long way around. I ain't one to scare easy, not after 27 years on the road, but let me tell you, the night of November 18th still haunts me like oil on a white shirt. It just won't come out no matter how hard you scrub. I was hauling a load of steel pipes through the Colorado Rockies, pitch black sky overhead, the kind of night where even the stars seem too scared to shine. I just passed mile marker 222 when the CB radio crackled to life with static and a voice that didn't belong to no one I knew. It was low, whispery, almost like wind squeezing through broken glass. And it said my name, I swear to you. It said my full name, middle and all, in a tone colder than the air in my cab. Now, I ain't told my full name to anyone in years, not since my wife passed, and hearing it echo in that truck was like having someone yank the air right out of my lungs. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and asked over the CB, "Who is this?" No answer. Just that same hissing static. Then all the lights on my dash flickered off. Total darkness. My headlights cut out. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, tires screeching on the frost-covered pavement. The truck came to a halt, but the silence that followed? That was the worst part. No wind, no animals, no hum of the engine. Just a deep, pressing stillness, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then I saw it. Up ahead, maybe 30 yards. In the beams of my backup battery lights stood a figure, tall, slender, dressed in what looked like a tattered highway patrol uniform, but his face, God help me, his face was wrapped in barbed wire. Not like it had been pushed into him, no, it was growing out of him, like the wire was his skin. And those eyes, they glowed this unnatural green like glow sticks melting in acid. I reached for my sidearm, I always keep it in the glove box, but when I turned back to the road he was gone, vanished like fog in heat. I restarted the engine, praying it would turn over, and thank God it did. The lights came back on, CB went silent, and I floored it out of there, tires burning rubber on asphalt. I didn't stop until I hit the next town, pale as a ghost and shaking like a rookie on his first long haul. That wasn't the last time I saw him either. No, that thing, I call him the wireman. He's been stalking my routes ever since. Shows up when I least expect it, standing off the side of the road watching. Sometimes I hear him whispering through the CB. Sometimes he's in the mirror. but he's always there, waiting. And I got a feeling this ain't just about me, because ever since that night, other truckers have gone missing along that same stretch of highway, and I think he's taken them, one by one. I tried telling the other drivers at the truck stop the next day. Figured maybe someone else had seen him too or heard something strange on the CB. You know how it goes. We sit around the counter, downing bad coffee and better lies, trading ghost stories and highway rumors like poker hands. But when I mentioned the figure in the patrol uniform with barbed wire for skin, the whole diner got quiet. Real quiet. Like I'd said something sacred, or worse, something cursed. An old-timer sitting near the end of the counter named Benny, gray, beard, eyes sunk deep like he hadn't slept in years. He muttered something under his breath I barely caught. "Wireman's back." I turned to him, heart already thumping, and asked what he meant. Benny wouldn't look at me, just stared at his cup and said, "Last time he showed up it was 96. 4 drivers disappeared over 3 weeks. Cops found their rigs empty. On the side of the highway, engines still warm, radios crackling with static. No bodies, no signs of a struggle. Just gone." Now I ain't the kind to buy into myths without proof, but there was something in Benny's voice that told me this wasn't just bar talk. He told me about a curve on Route 86, just before the road dips through a canyon. Same stretch I'd been on. He said that's where Wireman feeds. Said the land's cursed, that it goes all the way back to some highway crew that got buried in a landslide decades ago. Supposedly, one of the workers didn't die right away. He was pinned under steel and rock, calling for help for 2 days straight, but they couldn't reach him. When they finally dug him out, he was already gone, but not in the normal way. His body was twisted, barbed wire tangled around his bones like it grew there. They buried him right there under the road. Benny looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That's who you saw. And now that he's marked you, he'll never stop following." I laughed it off at the time. Thought maybe Benny'd had a few too many late nights or tall tales. But then I went back out on the road. A simple run, just 40 miles through, that canyon stretch. Sun was just going down, casting long shadows over the asphalt, and I remember thinking maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe I was just tired. But then my CB clicked on again, all on its own. No button pressed. And that voice, the same hollow whisper, said, "You left me behind." I damn near jumped out of my seat. I checked every channel, tried to find if anyone else was hearing it, but there was no one. Then I looked in the side mirror, and there he was again, standing on the shoulder, just watching. Only this time, his head was tilted, like he was listening. And I swear, my ears started ringing, and I could feel the barbed wire inside my own thoughts, like it was wrapping around my brain. I didn't even realize I'd swerved until my front tires kissed the guardrail. I gripped the wheel and shouted, "Leave me alone!" And just like that, he was gone again. No trace. But the fear, that stayed. That never left. The next few nights on the road were the worst of my life. I started avoiding that stretch near the canyon, taking longer routes, sometimes burning more fuel and losing hours just to stay off Route 86. I even started sleeping in truck stop lots with other rigs around. Safety in numbers, I thought. But even then, I wasn't safe. The dreams started. I'd be lying in the cab trying to catch some sleep when I'd hear my rig's engine starting on its own. Then I'd be driving through blackness. No road, no stars, just endless pitch, and the wireman would be sitting in the passenger seat. He wouldn't speak. He never needed to. His face would twitch under that tangle of barbed wire, and I'd hear the sound of metal twisting, grinding, pulling tight. Then I'd wake up drenched in sweat, CB radio hissing softly, and once I found the engine running, keys still in my pocket. It wasn't just dreams either. One night outside of Cheyenne, I stopped to take a leak in the middle of nowhere. I left the headlights on and walked a few feet into the brush, but when I turned back, I saw something scrawled in the condensation on my windshield. 4 words. "Still riding with you." I didn't wait. I hauled myself back into that truck and peeled out like hell was chasing me. But the worst part? The next morning, when I pulled into a way station and finally had the nerve to clean it off, the words were written from the inside. I started hearing stories from other truckers, too. A guy named Miguel said he'd seen a patrolman standing in the middle of the road near mile marker 222. Said when he tried to stop, his brakes locked up and his rig just passed through the man like he was smoke. Another buddy of mine, Kevin, disappeared altogether. Left a voicemail rambling about being followed, about voices in the radio, said he couldn't sleep, couldn't think. That was 2 weeks ago. They found his truck parked on the shoulder with the door wide open. The engine was running. No sign of Kevin. Just a smear of blood on the driver's seat and long strands of rusted wire tangled in the footwell. That's when I knew this wasn't just a haunting. This was a hunt. And for some reason, I was in the middle of it. I started digging. You know me. I don't just roll over. I asked around, hit up every old-timer who remembered the canyon, looked into state records, accident reports, obituaries. That's when I found the name. Carl Hensley. He was the worker buried under the landslide in 1972. Took him 2.5 days to recover the body. And get this, when the coroner filed the report, he listed unnatural injuries and noted that barbed wire had somehow penetrated the skin post-mortem. No one ever explained how. Some said Carl was part of a small cult that believed the land was sacred, and when it was disturbed by the highway project, they performed rituals to bind the earth back together. One of the rituals involved using barbed wire, blood, and iron. I didn't believe in that crap back then. I sure as hell do now. I ain't one to scare easy, not after 27 years on the road. But let me tell you, the night of November 18th still haunts me like oil on a white shirt. It just won't come out no matter how hard you scrub. I was hauling a load of steel pipes through the Colorado Rockies, pitch black sky overhead, the kind of night where even the stars seem too scared to shine. I'd just passed mile marker 222 when the CB radio crackled to life with static and a voice that didn't belong to no one I knew. It was low, whispery, almost like wind squeezing through broken glass. And it said my name, I swear to you. It said my full name, middle and all, in a tone colder than the air in my cab. Now, I ain't told my full name to anyone in years, not since my wife passed, and hearing it echo in that truck was like having someone yank the air right out of my lungs. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and asked over the CB, "Who is this?" No answer. Just that same hissing static. Then all the lights on my dash flickered off. Total darkness. My headlights cut out. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, tires screeching on the frost-covered pavement. The truck came to a halt, but the silence that followed? That was the worst part. No wind, no animals, no hum of the engine. Just a deep, pressing stillness, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then I saw it. Up ahead, maybe 30 yards. In the beams of my backup battery lights stood a figure, tall, slender, dressed in what looked like a tattered highway patrol uniform, but his face, God help me, his face was wrapped in barbed wire. Not like it had been pushed into him, no. It was growing out of him, like the wire was his skin. And those eyes, they glowed this unnatural green like glow sticks melting in acid. I reached for my sidearm, I always keep it in the glove box. But when I turned back to the road, he was gone. Vanished like fog in heat. I restarted the engine, praying it would turn over, and thank God it did. The lights came back on, CB went silent, and I floored it out of there, tires burning rubber on asphalt. I didn't stop until I hit the next town, pale as a ghost and shaking like a rookie on his first long haul. That wasn't the last time I saw him either. No, that thing, I call him the wireman. He's been stalking my routes ever since. Shows up when I least expect it, standing off the side of the road watching. Sometimes I hear him whispering through the CB. Sometimes he's in the mirror. But he's always there, waiting. And I got a feeling this ain't just about me. Because ever since that night, other truckers have gone missing along that same stretch of highway. And I think he's taken them, one by one. I tried telling the other drivers at the truck stop the next day. Figured maybe someone else had seen him too or heard something strange on the CB. You know how it goes. We sit around the counter, downing bad coffee and better lies, trading ghost stories and highway rumors like poker hands. But when I mentioned the figure in the patrol uniform with barbed wire for skin, the whole diner got quiet. Real quiet. Like I'd said something sacred, or worse, something cursed. An old-timer sitting near the end of the counter named Benny, gray, beard, eyes sunk deep like he hadn't slept in years. He muttered something under his breath I barely caught. "Wireman's back." I turned to him, heart already thumping, and asked what he meant. Benny wouldn't look at me, just stared at his cup and said, "Last time he showed up it was 96. 4 drivers disappeared over 3 weeks. Cops found their rigs empty. On the side of the highway, engines still warm, radios crackling with static. No bodies, no signs of a struggle. Just gone." Now I ain't the kind to buy into myths without proof, but there was something in Benny's voice that told me this wasn't just bar talk. He told me about a curve on Route 86, just before the road dips through a canyon. Same stretch I'd been on. He said that's where Wireman feeds. Said the land's cursed, that it goes all the way back to some highway crew that got buried in a landslide decades ago. Supposedly, one of the workers didn't die right away. He was pinned under steel and rock, calling for help for 2 days straight, but they couldn't reach him. When they finally dug him out, he was already gone, but not in the normal way. His body was twisted, barbed wire tangled around his bones like it grew there. They buried him right there under the road. Benny looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That's who you saw. And now that he's marked you, he'll never stop following." I laughed it off at the time. Thought maybe Benny'd had a few too many late nights or tall tales. But then I went back out on the road. A simple run, just 40 miles through, that canyon stretch. Sun was just going down, casting long shadows over the asphalt, and I remember thinking maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe I was just tired. But then my CB clicked on again, all on its own. No button pressed. And that voice, the same hollow whisper, said, "You left me behind." I damn near jumped out of my seat. I checked every channel, tried to find if anyone else was hearing it, but there was no one. Then I looked in the side mirror, and there he was again, standing on the shoulder, just watching. Only this time, his head was tilted, like he was listening. And I swear, my ears started ringing, and I could feel the barbed wire inside my own thoughts, like it was wrapping around my brain. I didn't even realize I'd swerved until my front tires kissed the guardrail. I gripped the wheel and shouted, "Leave me alone!" And just like that, he was gone again. No trace. But the fear, that stayed. That never left. The next few nights on the road were the worst of my life. I started avoiding that stretch near the canyon, taking longer routes, sometimes burning more fuel and losing hours just to stay off Route 86. I even started sleeping in truck stop lots with other rigs around. Safety in numbers, I thought. But even then, I wasn't safe. The dreams started. I'd be lying in the cab trying to catch some sleep when I'd hear my rig's engine starting on its own. Then I'd be driving through blackness. No road, no stars, just endless pitch, and the wireman would be sitting in the passenger seat. He wouldn't speak. He never needed to. His face would twitch under that tangle of barbed wire, and I'd hear the sound of metal twisting, grinding, pulling tight. Then I'd wake up drenched in sweat, CB radio hissing softly, and once I found the engine running, keys still in my pocket. It wasn't just dreams either. One night outside of Cheyenne, I stopped to take a leak in the middle of nowhere. I left the headlights on and walked a few feet into the brush, but when I turned back, I saw something scrawled in the condensation on my windshield. 4 words. Still riding with you?" I didn't wait. I hauled myself back into that truck and peeled out like hell was chasing me. But the worst part? The next morning, when I pulled into a way station and finally had the nerve to clean it off, the words were written from the inside. I started hearing stories from other truckers, too. A guy named Miguel said he'd seen a patrolman standing in the middle of the road near mile marker 222. Said when he tried to stop, his brakes locked up and his rig just passed through the man like he was smoke. Another buddy of mine, Kevin, disappeared altogether. Left a voicemail rambling about being followed, about voices in the radio, said he couldn't sleep, couldn't think. That was 2 weeks ago. They found his truck parked on the shoulder with the door wide open. The engine was running. No sign of Kevin. Just a smear of blood on the driver's seat and long strands of rusted wire tangled in the footwell. That's when I knew this wasn't just a haunting. This was a hunt. And for some reason, I was in the middle of it. I started digging. You know me. I don't just roll over. I asked around, hit up every old-timer who remembered the canyon, looked into state records, accident reports, obituaries. That's when I found the name. Carl Hensley. He was the worker buried under the landslide in 1972. Took him 2.5 days to recover the body. And get this, when the coroner filed the report, he listed unnatural injuries and noted that barbed wire had somehow penetrated the skin post-mortem. No one ever explained how. Some said Carl was part of a small cult that believed the land was sacred, and when it was disturbed by the highway project, they performed rituals to bind the earth back together. One of the rituals involved using barbed wire, blood, and iron. I didn't believe in that crap back then. I sure as hell do now.